he is irreplaceable in one sense. You know, there's never going to be another leader of a movement like Scalia. We'll have other justices, and even if we found someone who's going to vote the same way that he did, it would not be the same, because we're not going to have someone that was a visionary about legal philosophy. We're probably also not going to have someone who had the same color that he did. He really saw himself as speaking not just to lawyers, but to lay people too, and he tried to be very colorful. He tried to write his opinions in a way that were very accessible to everyone. He really wrote his opinions like they were speeches, and that made them very readable. He was always very entertaining, because he wanted to break through, you know, some of the inaccessibility of legal jargon and the law to reach everyone, to help try to persuade them about his view of the role of the judge in a democratic society. So it'll be impossible to find someone that can fill his shoes. He was obviously very brilliant, and he took his job very seriously, and he believed very strongly in his beliefs, very confident man. But he was also a very kind, loving, caring man, a patriotic man. One of his sons was in the Marines. On 9/11, I was clerking for him. He was in Italy. It was before the term started. It was September. The term starts in October. And I had to telephone him in his hotel in Italy to let him know that we had to evacuate the Supreme Court. And that was a very hard year at the court, but it was a year that I think really brought everyone together, all the law clerks, all the justices, no matter what people's political views. Everyone really came together that year after 9/11 because we realized what was important and what wasn't important a little bit better. He was the father of a conservative movement on how to interpret the Constitution and to interpret acts of Congress. He believed that the judge should play a very modest role in a democratic society. It wasn't the job of the judge to breathe into the law the judge's own preferences and hopes and desires. It was the job of the judge just to stick to what the people who wrote those laws understood those laws to do, and that was it. And so it was a very modest role, and he was very influential in moving that view of the judge forward. Legal academics have done studies of the influence that Justice Scalia has had in how judges go about deciding cases. And so, for example, it was very popular before Scalia went on the Supreme Court for when a judge saw a case involving an act of Congress, what's the proper interpretation of the act of Congress? The judge would look to see what maybe this member of Congress had to say, and not look to see what the ordinary meaning of the words of the law was. Rely on what one member of Congress said, not what the dictionary said the words meant. And Justice Scalia said that's wrong. We should stick to what the ordinary words mean. We shouldn't try to find a congressman who agrees with us and then cite that person for the meaning of the law. And since Justice Scalia has been on the Supreme Court, citations among judges to what individual members of Congress say are way down, and citations to the dictionary are way up. And so he doesn't win all the time when he's voting on the Supreme Court, but his philosophies are on everyone's mind all the time. The case involving the right to bear arms, called Heller, was the lead party in that case. The Supreme Court found 5-4 that we have an individual right to bear arms under the Second Amendment, not just a right to join a militia. And Justice Scalia's majority opinion for the court was all about, well, what did the people who wrote the Second Amendment understand it to mean? And the dissenting opinion by the 4 liberal justices was all about, what did the people who wrote the Second Amendment understand it to mean at that time? And so his philosophy was really the philosophy of all the justices in that case. Everyone was meeting Scalia on his own terms. Instead of talking about what's the consequences of gun control, which was very common and still is common in Supreme Court opinions, it was all about the history and what people understood their words to mean when they wrote them. And so that was a real vindication of his philosophy that everyone was debating on his terms.